Welcome back, everybody, to a milestone episode of the GCSAA Podcast, our 50th episode overall. As always, we are presented in partnership with Enview. To learn more about the company and its offerings in the golf industry, go to www.us.enview.com. I'm your host, Scott Hollister, and I'm glad you have joined us for this very special episode. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into the technological revolution underway in golf course management by introducing you to a course and a superintendent who are as invested in the concept of precision turf management as anyone in the country, as we talk with Matt Muhlenbruch. Matt is the certified golf course superintendent at Hillcrest Country Club in Los Angeles. And while I know plenty of superintendents who utilize technology to make the maintenance of their facilities more efficient, more environmentally friendly, I don't know many who have taken that concept quite as far as Matt and his team have at Hillcrest. So I look forward to diving deeper into all of that on this, the 50th episode of the GCSAA Podcast. A reminder that in addition to the usual audio version of the podcast that you can find at gcsaa.org and on services such as Apple, Spotify, Google, and Stitcher, we are now offering video versions as well that you can check out on both GCSA TV and on GCSAA's YouTube channel. In this episode, for example, the video version of the podcast will feature photos of some of the technologies that Matt and I talk about to offer a little more depth to our conversations. So if you are into that kind of stuff, I'd encourage you to check out the new video version of the GCSAA podcast. With that, here we go. It's the 50th episode of the GCSAA podcast with Matt Muhlenbruch, CGCS from Hillcrest Country Club in Los Angeles. Hope you enjoy it. Well, one of the interesting things that I get to do in my job, obviously, is this podcast, in addition to kind of overseeing every issue of the magazine. And I often get asked, where content ideas come from for both, because it's between the podcast and the magazine. That's quite a lot. And I say we're lucky to have a lot of members who help out with that. We have a lot of staff members who share ideas, and the subject of this podcast actually comes from one of those staff members, the David Phipps, who happens to be the GCSA field staff representative in the Pacific Northwest. And he just sent me an email and said he had been looking for. Were you speaking somewhere? Is that what he was looking for you to do? I'm trying to recall.
I believe he was speaking somewhere and looking for someone had heard what some of the things we've been doing here, and we've presented at a few of the regional meetings and stuff like that. And I think he got wind of what we were doing here through one of the assistants, Laura Beth Catterson, who discussed this at the golf industry show. So yeah, then he contacted me.
Well, yeah, David's former superintendent, great field staff rep for us up in the Pacific Northwest, lives in the Portland area. And anyway, he just forwarded me the email exchange you guys had. He goes, "This sounds like something that might be of interest to the podcast or the magazine." And I couldn't have agreed more. And so, without letting him speak anymore, I'll actually introduce him to the to the viewers and listeners out there. We're happy to have Matt Muhlenbruch. Matt's certified golf course superintendent at Hillcrest Country Club in Los Angeles. And as we get into this, the crux of the conversation obviously will be about some of the new technologies that Matt and his crew have embraced there at Hillcrest. It's something that just in my role, I'm certainly aware of superintendents all across the country and how they're using technology to better manage their courses, more efficiently manage their courses, be more environmentally friendly. But some of the stuff that came to light that's going on at Hillcrest, it kind of takes that to the next level. So we will talk about that. So Matt, thank you for your time and for joining us today. I'm excited about the conversation.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate you reaching out, and it's nice to actually be talking with some superintendents about this. So,
yeah, it'll be exciting. You are not the first. You mentioned Laura Beth. She kind of scooped you getting on the podcast. Is she aware that you're doing this?
Yeah, she's aware of it. She's definitely scooped me on a couple of these things, which is great. I'm glad for her to get the property, to get the recognition, and for her to get out there. And she's really been instrumental in putting all of this together and implementing a lot of these plans, so as one of the old members I knew at one of the clubs I worked at, he was an old Navy guy. So the Chiefs run the Navy. So, where I kind of leave it to her and the management team to really make it happen as we bring all these different things in to the property.
We're talking about Laura Beth Catterson. Laura Beth was and Catterson's her married name, correct? Am I getting that correct? Good.
Yes.
Good. Because when she did appear on a previous episode of the podcast, so you can go back in the archives and check that out as well. Kind of talked about her career a little bit and some of the things that she's doing at Hillcrest. But Matt, we'll focus on you right now.
Sure.
And kind of let you. We'll start off maybe with a little with your origin story to kind of introduce yourself and what's going on at Hillcrest to the listeners and to the viewers. Where were you born, raised, grow up, and how did you first get interested in a career in golf?
So I was born and raised in New Jersey, a long way from LA, but and much like most people, I started playing the game before I got into the grass end of it. From a young age, my father took up golf a little later in life, and I wound up going with him when I was about 9-10 years old. Started playing at the local little 9-hole golf course in the neighborhood. And that was how I got into golf. And then as I got older, I was playing more and I started working on a golf course, and a pretty natural transition into the muni world, the municipal world of golf, or even not all muni, but some smaller public golf courses that I worked on in the golf shop for a half a summer. And then when I came in one day, I was told that I'd be working out on the golf course for the rest of the summer, which I was very happy to make that transition. It wasn't really, I didn't particularly care for the shop end of it. Wasn't really what I wanted to do. And then from there, that was 12 or 13 years old when I did that. And it kind of, that was it. Wound up, eventually came time to go to college, went to Penn State for turf grass science degree, and kind of from there have been moving throughout the country, but I've been in California now for a while. So after I went to school, I first went to California at an internship in Northern California, and really just enjoyed the landscape and the summer I spent in Northern California. And then of course, after you get out of college, and I was still in the Northeast, and I always wanted to go back to California. Eventually made it, but it took a little while longer than I had expected. I went from college to a new new construction in New Jersey, which didn't last real long, which it's now Trump Colts Neck. At the time, it was a different ownership group. Then moved to the Mid-Atlantic, Maryland, and worked at a place called Cattail Creek, which was just an incredible experience in terms of growing grass. Obviously the weather is just legendary in that area of the world. And
that's right.
And it was a great place to be learning about disease pressure, rotation of fungicides, pest management. It was my the first job I had was construction. So it was mostly wire pulling, building greens, that kind of thing. And then this was really more the maintenance and conditioning aspect of the profession. That was really fascinating, but how challenging all of the weather is in the Mid-Atlantic. It was definitely eye-opening. Even growing up in New Jersey, the difference between the Baltimore, DC region and northern New Jersey is right. So I had a great mentor, and Steve Lutz was the superintendent at Cattail Creek where I worked. I enjoyed it, but again, my goal was always to move back to California. So after a couple of seasons in Maryland, I went to I found a position back in Northern California at the California Golf Club. Stayed there, worked for Thomas Bastis for about 2 years. About 2 years I worked with him, and then a position at the Olympic Club opened up. And
okay, that's right.
Which was really, I really enjoyed working at the California Golf Club with Thomas, and we had a major renovation coming on the golf course, and it was one of those. It was a good problem to have, right?
Right.
A couple of really great career opportunities presented themselves, but I ultimately went to work at the Olympic Club and was there for over 7 years. And that was kind of the longest stint I've had at one property, which was, as we all joked around about, it was like dog years, working at it.
That's right. We have our guest, another guest host that we'll introduce later.
Okay.
Or a spectator. I'm not sure. He kind of looks like he kind of just chilling out behind you there. So
yeah. Yeah. We have but it's a 45-hole complex in the middle of San Francisco. Had lots of layers to it, lots of construction, but even in terms of managing a large size property and being part of a management team, more so than really just the relationship between an assistant and the superintendent, it was a much more dynamic, big operation with a lot of moving parts. And then you throw a union labor force involved in that, which just adds another layer to the whole experience. And then of working in San Francisco. And we had we rebuilt both golf courses there. We had the U.S. Amateur in between that, the U.S. Open, and then kind of after that, I was really ready to move on from there. Loved San Francisco, enjoyed the club, but it was just time to get onto my own spot, right? And then Poppy Hills in the Monterey Peninsula was doing a major renovation, and I went there and did grow in there and managed that property for about 5 years. And then they wanted Hillcrest Country Club, which I had never even heard of. I had no idea about this place at all, but they were looking for a superintendent with construction experience and somebody who's willing to live in Los Angeles. And I'm a bit of a city guy, and Monterey Peninsula doesn't really offer that for me and my family. So we moved down to LA and had a very, very big renovation here in the middle of the city. So it had a unique set of challenges, to say the least. But it's been really a great transition. It's a great club to work for, and we've had a lot of success out here, a lot of hard work that went into this property, but it was fence line to fence line reimagined renovation. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, we have, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, about the renovation coming up. I did a little research on Hillcrest before coming on there. Founded in 1920, a host of Hollywood celebrities over the years, especially from the golden age of Hollywood. And I'm not sure how many of our younger listeners and viewers will remember the names of Jack Benny, Milton Berle, the Marx Brothers. They listed Lou Holtz on the website, which I was like, oh, Lou Holtz. And I'm like, wait a minute, he's not a Hollywood celebrity. He's a football coach. But nevertheless, a celebrity. But what would you tell folks about the club? If you had a little elevator speech and you had to give them a kind of a quick 45-second rundown of what Hillcrest is all about.
Well, it's funny to say that when obviously you can mention a lot of the past celebrities and comedians and stuff that in the Hollywood crowd that often were members here. But the club's real mission statement and backbone is about philanthropy. The club has, and not to get too detailed, but there are philanthropy requirements to be a member here. So it's not just about golf and country club, and there's an element of giving back to this membership that is unique to this club. So whether that be, you're sitting on the board of directors at a hospital, or some one way or another, that's part of the fabric of the club and has been for a very, very long time, which is funny because it's not nearly as known for that as it is for having Groucho Marx and Milton Berle, as members. But that's really been that's also what drew me to this place. I thought it was pretty fascinating element to a club, and for it to be here for 100 years. And I mean, it's so having that as kind of the baseline of the club, or at least really a big part of its philosophy. It's meaningful when you're discussing any kind of change to the club, and that is always in every part of the discussion of the golf course or of the club. Whether you're changing the golf course, why are we doing this? Is this to bring more golfers in? Because it doesn't really matter if you're the best golfer in LA. You're going to be a member of Hillcrest if you're the best golfer and you have a very giving mentality in history
Yeah.
of philanthropic work. So it's not always just about what the facilities are, which is a different working environment.
Yeah, that's a cool element. I've not heard, you certainly hear about the philanthropic efforts of the game in general, and individual clubs, but making it kind of a tenet of membership like that, and really kind of a pillar of what the membership is built on is a pretty cool way to go about it. You talked about the renovation. Kyle Phillips did that. I've got 2018 in my notes. I'm sure was that the year of the full renovation? Did it stretch a little bit longer that? And what did it all entail?
So it started, obviously the golf course started being renovated in September-ish of 18, which when I came here for an interview for this job, they were having a succession. There was a superintendent here that was here for 25 years and he was getting ready to retire. This was, we're renovating the place. We're going to have a new guy come in and then he was going to retire. That was all part of the plan. And when I came here for the interview, it was, it was all brown. Everything was in place, but it was all brown. And it was a beautiful property, really kind of needed that. It reminded me so much of the Cal Club prior to their renovation. I think that was in 2007 or so, 2006. But this, and it had that same feel of this really kind of great property that just needed to be reimagined, right?
Sure.
And so anyway, so the initial timeline was pretty tight. We had a rainy winter, which is unheard of for LA, which if you want it to rain, obviously all you need to do is open up a golf course.
That's right.
Open up 100 acres and you'll break any drought that you may have been in.
That's right.
So that was, it started in the fall of 18 and we opened up in the fall of 19. And the golf course had 18 holes, putting green, and a very short driving range. And what they reimagined was really having great practice facilities and a golf course, because a lot of the membership would come in to use the driving range. And then the idea was to build a 5-hole short course to really accommodate that after work kind of crowd, that and get more interest in that respect. And then obviously the golf courses, a lot of the members, the newer members aren't utilizing the club during work hours. And this was all pre-COVID, of course, the philosophy on this. Then everything changed. So having the after work crowd come and utilize the club more so than they had in the past was really worked out in the beginning, obviously before COVID shut everything down. And then also wedged in here is just spectacular 18-hole championship golf course, right? That measures out from the tips at 7,100 yards. So it was a pretty creative way of kind of wedging all of this stuff in here. And as soon as you come in the gate, you would never think you were in the middle of West Los Angeles. I mean, it's a wide open, very peaceful place that as soon as you get out, you're on Pico. It's just, right in the middle of LA. So not that you're going anywhere quickly as you get out on.
No, absolutely not. Well, but that's awesome to be kind of an oasis there.
Yeah.
And I know there are several properties that are your neighbors or your sort of not so distant neighbors who serve a similar purpose. So coming on, what were there agronomic challenges that you were facing after that renovation? And
a lot of the renovation really wanted to reimagine the property, meet some of the newer needs of the membership, right? And obviously, anytime you're going to do anything in golf in California, and especially Southern California, you really want to address water issues where you can. So part of the grassing plan was to switch to Bermuda grass.
Okay.
In the property, in the fairways, and it was an old Kikuyu golf course. And so they switched grasses, and part of that process was getting rid of the Kikuyu was to scrape it all off and get rid of it. And which left a challenging soil situation to grow in a golf course on basically subgrade. And as some of the other agronomists from tour and otherwise said to me, Matt, Bermuda grass is a great fit for down there because Southern California soils are like concrete. And
Right.
They were absolutely right. It was
Yes.
it's a very heavy, lots of magnesium, very tight soils. And not only that, you have a lot of inconsistencies in textures. We'll have some veins of sand that run through this place and then that are sitting right next to clay, which makes the irrigation challenging, the fertility very inconsistent. So trying to get a consistent product out of the soil is challenging. That's probably our single biggest issue we've had agronomically. And then of course, no matter what you do west of the Mississippi, it's all about water, right? There's never a rainstorm coming. Mostly we average about 9 inches of rain a year, which you're fully dependent on your water supply. And then as droughts drag on, that supply is threatened more and more every year, or it's adjusted every year. So
right.
When this, part of this was to switch to Bermuda grass for agronomic reasons and for playability. We wanted a little more ball roll than what traditionally Kikuyu offers. So what was done in order, really, not just in the grassing plan, but the irrigation system design was really giving us as managers the most amount of control over the water that we can, right? So we have, your very typical irrigation layout, 60-foot spacing, but then along all of the rough lines, there's a supplementary irrigation. So basically you have 2 irrigation systems laid on top of each other.
Wow.
And we have 2 different water sources. Some of it's well, some of it's potable. So we can reduce the amount of potable water we're using and just pipe that to the greens because the groundwater has a lot of salts and bicarbonates in it.
Right.
And with no rain, that builds up rather quickly. It can be challenging. So really, and that's where from there, that was the design. And then having all of these different options with how you can irrigate here, then it was kind of up to us and the team to design an irrigation philosophy around it. We have to really get the water right here in Southern California, and everything else kind of falls in line around that, whether it be adjusting your water quality or your fertility programs based around what your water inputs are. Your single biggest input on property here is water. So your soils are going to mimic whatever's in your water. So your fertility program is going to wind up trying to offset some of these negative constituents of the water. And so we filter and whatever else we're the next 10 years of construction project here at Hillcrest.
Sure. Has the famously this winter has been a rough one weather-wise in the state of California. Have you guys seen the impacts from that weird winter weather this year?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. We've had close to 35 inches of rain, which is
holy cow.
Yeah, which is at least 3 times the average, if not more. And never curse the rain in Southern California. So as far as it being crazy, and I'll take it right now. I'm so happy because this spring is the most the golf course has been since we renovated. Right, it got a nice flushing rain on it, but it's not without its inconveniences to the membership, with no cart restrictions and those types of things that we all go through all the time because we don't have continuous cart path on the property. We're not really built for rain. We're not, the property drains, but these tight soils, it can stay wet. We have an aggressive top dressing program, but it's only been two years in. So it's not quite there to allow for play and regular play as soon as possible. I think it's more just making it even more difficult to get deliveries, to get people around the city, when it rains.
Yeah.
But it has been largely beneficial to us with the right snowpack, the right reservoir levels. That means that we can at least have a little breathing room when it comes to watering, and maybe at this point going to be able to, for a lot of the clubs in the area, make some headway into real projects that are going to save water consistently over the years, not just turn off irrigation heads. Then you have kind of a half-dead golf course. Like you can really get into some of the projects that everyone's been talking about, maybe some turf reductions with an architect that don't look like you just went out and shut off a bunch of water, and keeping the integrity of these golf courses,
Right. Yeah, it's been interesting speaking with colleagues of yours, I'm sure, from back in Northern California, and some of the things they've been experiencing in terms of the wind and depending on where they are. And the GCSAA president, Kevin Breen, and Los Gatos, just south of San Jose, and some of the tree damage he's had, just to things that have just not been experienced previously are being dealt with on a long-term basis. And it seems like every week one storm after another is some of those make their way here to the Midwest, some of them don't. They slide south or north, and so the north gets pounded with snow or severe weather to our south, which obviously has been a sad story down there in recent weeks.
Yeah,
kind of a crazy time for a lot of superintendents. I'm sure you've still got colleagues up there that you connect with to hear about what they're experiencing in the Bay Area.
I talk to Justin Mannon at Positiempo regularly, and it has been he's just underwater all the time. It's like 60, 70 inches. I can't even remember what it was, but and which is funny because I remember being in the Monterey Peninsula that has limited water, and looking at the weather map, the storm map, and it would always hit Santa Cruz, which was 20 miles up the road from us, and we would get a half an inch, where Positiempo would wind up getting 5 inches of rain in the winter. So it's a funny pattern in California, and it's just incredible how you can be very close to each other and have a completely different winter. But this winter, everybody is enjoying the rain.
Yeah,
or I am. I hate to curse it, I mean, it's been 4 years since we had really
absolutely
any.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, even you go back farther, just the long-term, the drought issues have been more the rule than the exception.
Yeah.
So I'm sure for folks like you, it's a nice break, and you can it gives you some advantages you probably didn't anticipate. But well, I want to pivot into some of the technology that you folks are using there at Hillcrest. And I guess I'd start more generally and just ask, where did the interest in this come from? Is it something that you're personally interested in? Is it are you an early adopter when it comes to technology, or has that interest been largely focused on your golf life versus your personal life?
Well, I'm definitely more in my professional life, but really it came from being in the Bay Area and working in San Francisco at the time that I was there. Was an absolute tech explosion, right? I mean, there was innovations happening in that area in all aspects of business and life, right? It was when the iPhone started to come out, and you started seeing a change in a way that things can be done differently. So under that influence and that philosophy, you look at your own profession differently, right? And being in the heart of that innovation and technology was really exciting. I mean, none of it was happening in golf at the time. I mean, it's always kind of later. Ag gets it first in terms of like ag sciences and ag technology. But that was where personally I started to see very quickly how businesses in the world can change, and you don't have to necessarily manage things the way they've always been managed, right? I mean, it's just, that's an inflection point of the country and the way that things have been done over the last 10, 15 years. And now a lot of this stuff is being utilized in golf, and that same similar philosophy. It's really about, it's not just about technology, and what we talk about as a management team here is really about innovation, right? Whether it be right now, we have our problems, right? We have our water issues. We have a grassing plan that requires precision spraying, pest management, all of these things. And the pressures on the golf course, especially in urban environments, for all of these different resources is becoming enormous. So where do we find better solutions? And I think that you can have utilizing a lot of the tools that are out in the market now really we're at a point now where you don't necessarily have to give up quality and standards for your golf course to meet a certain how do I say it, like a consumption requirement, right? So I think that you can do things better, more efficiently, and you changing your mindset and using some of and adopting some of these technologies. Am I an early adopter? The one thing about a lot of these technologies that there's a million widgets out there. So for us, a lot of this stuff has to have a meaningful effect on the operation. Or otherwise, you can wind up every 3 months you're updating some software. You just get lost in the process of adopting technology and not actually utilizing it, right? Because most of the stuff, all of the work's at the front end of it. You got to get it all set up, and you kind of manage the mowers or the drone or all of these things that you have to do. And a lot of that, it all started with our irrigation system here. And what we did to our number one issue here is water. So what we wanted to do, given the inconsistencies of the soil and the scarcity of water, or at least the discussion of the scarcity of water around here, we looked to the market as to what the best way to manage our water is with this irrigation system, right? I mean, you could imagine that when we opened, or the first couple of, the first season, with the amount of irrigation heads out here, it was really challenging to get this whole thing to work together and be more like a symphony than it was like a fourth grade band. And we utilized something that's been around for a while. It was called the Precision Sense by Toro. And we had performed this at Poppy Hills when I was there. And it audits the property, the soil of the property after you have a rainstorm. And it gives you volumetric water content, compaction, and like turf health, plant health. We really use the volumetric water content and the compaction for our purposes. So what it actually did was put all of those inconsistencies that we have on the soil, in our soil, on a map, right? And that map shows, your volumetric water content, what's dry, what's wet. After you're supposed to use a rainstorm, but we used irrigation because it didn't rain for 5 years.
Right.
So we could identify very accurately where the driest and wettest areas on the golf course were. And then very basically, we just put the irrigation map on top of that and built out all of our programs based on volumetric water content and compaction, right? Because compacted soils obviously irrigate much differently than you do sand. So all of these different areas, I mean, it's not the simplest way to irrigate a golf course, but it's broken up across all of these areas, right? And you actually have data, not just this seems to be wet over here, let's build a site code. It was very accurate as to what we came up with, or what that showed. And then I would say that got us about 85% of the way there, right? And then you have to tweak your irrigation system based on elevations and whatever else there. But what that gave us by the end of the second season gave us a really accurate and consistent golf course. The wet spots went away, right? The dry spots were getting managed on a much more regular basis. The spot watering and hand watering stuff all reduced, right? We're utilizing what's in the ground in your central computer and the irrigation system to give you what you need, and not trying to supplement with labor, right? Which was the second biggest challenge we have here. And so everyone has, right? The water and labor. That's all we've been talking about California.
Right.
But utilizing that kind of precision really allowed us to get the uniformity we were looking for. And then obviously, like, these are the types of things that you build on, right? From there, we have all of these different segments of the golf course. Then we started to drop in soil sensors and build a network of 20 sensors out on the golf course in all of these like areas, right? So you can see the duration as to how much water you're losing in a day, compare it to the weather station's ET, and get an idea of how much water to run, and then when will we have to do that again, right? That's what we've been doing the last 2 seasons, is getting trying to build somewhat of a predictable model on this based on our soil scouts. That's the branded soil sensor we used. We tried a lot of them. That was my preference. Not everyone agreed with me, but sometimes it's not a democracy always. So
that's right.
That's the one. That's the one I like.
The buck stops somewhere with that.
Yeah, so somebody had to make the final call on that. But we used that, and it's been a really great way to get all of this data on the property, right? I mean, it's taken a lot. It's a lot of setup, but once you have this, I can't imagine not having it, right? Not having all of this stuff in the ground. If I were to go somewhere else, it'd be like, immediately we need to go do this. And the last stage of that really was the irrigation portion of this was the drone technology that had recently come out, or at least that, I mean, it's not recent. I mean, GreenSight's been around for a while. They've been doing this in golf for a good 10 years. And I remember when they first approached me about it, and I was at Poppy Hills, and I was like, what do I need that for? And now it's something that we fly daily, and it really shows. We've reduced further by seeing this daily image on a thermal camera, what's drying out. So even within these programs, we're getting even more control of the water. Now, obviously, the next step is working with Rainbird to integrate those two things. Like, some of these things are in silos, right? So getting it to be part of the central computer, and how you can, instead of sitting down and taking an hour to set water at the end of the day, how do we just kind of do it on the iPad? You circle what you want based off this imagery, which is eventually where we'd like to get to, right? And but that's, and the drone really, once we started using it, between that service and between the irrigation, and then also the NDVI function on it, now we're getting into the whole fertility side of it. If you had any questions about the irrigation side, but we have started utilizing that for some of our fertility programs, and working with John Deere with the GPS spray rigs.
Okay. Yeah.
So we have a fleet of GPS spray rigs here, mostly because we have a cool season and warm season grassing plan. So any of the preventative herbicides and, to maintain both of these properties can be obviously toxic one to the other. And the savings on product usage in your target area when you're dealing with, 50-acre fields is significant. When you have 50 acres of fairway, no overlap compared to a 10% overlap is a lot of savings in product and money. Integrating
all of that stuff, it sure sounds like you guys are getting things dialed in. We've got some more questions. I do need to take a quick break here to pay some bills. Sure. So we'll do that, and we will be back with more from Matt Muhlenbruch from Hillcrest right after this. We'll get back to this episode in a moment, but now a word from Enview, which is committed to working with golf course superintendents to accomplish great things on the course every day. Enview offers hardworking programs and innovative solutions that anticipate your needs to help you achieve the most consistently beautiful and playable turf possible. And with spring right around the corner, it's prime time to apply fungicides like Tartan Stress Guard and Densacor. Densacor fungicide is an innovative DMI that provides next-level control of fairy ring, mini ring, and take-all root rot. Similarly, Tartan Stress Guard fungicide is a highly effective DMI for control of fairy ring, take-all root rot, and other diseases. Plus, it provides the added plant health benefits of Stress Guard fungicides. The right applications of these innovative solutions can prevent turf diseases now and lead to stronger, healthier turf into the summer months. Contact your Enview representative or go to www.us.enview.com to learn more about these solutions and how they can help you protect your turf from harmful diseases when it matters most. Always read and follow label instructions, and remember that not all products are registered for use in all states. Our thanks again to everyone at Enview for their support of the GCSAA podcast. And now back to this episode. We are back with Matt Muhlenbruch from Hillcrest Country Club, talking about some of the technologies that he and his team use. to manage the facility there and just kind of the integrated approach. What was staff acceptance like as you started to introduce these tools? Was there any resistance? Did they see the benefit right away? How did that work with your team to get them to kind of buy into the direction you were heading?
The sprayers, there was a little bit of pause when we had a GPS spray rig in here, and there's a certain amount of pride that they could do it with the master booms and toggles, and
Sure.
you don't need all of this. And but fairly quickly, you utilize this stuff, and within the first or second spray, you just realize it's just way better, right? Like it's just a more advanced technology. It's just easier for everybody, and it's really not a threat to anyone's position,
Right?
Somebody still has to sit on the thing. So as far as that was pretty quick. Irrigation wise, I don't know if there's too many that are managing the water in the same philosophy that we are. So getting the thought process on how to irrigate the property, it took a little while. There wasn't much resistance. It was just more of an understanding of what we were trying to do and why, because we're really trying to conserve as much water as possible. So that, I think that most of my team is really open-minded to it, and some learn at different paces, and
Sure.
their strengths and understandings are at a different pace. But ultimately, it was something that a lot of people were excited about. And Laura, really, this was her responsibility, because I felt that the irrigation and the spray program here, and utilizing all of this new technology, was going to take a team of staff and a manager to manage the whole thing, right? Because of how much work was in front of it. The front end of it is so much setup. So she's really had this thing from the beginning and really embraced it. And from there, the rest of the team really kind of pulled off what they needed to have the operation. I'm sure she'll be teaching a class on this at some point.
Yeah.
But there's that. As far as the resistance goes, not much. I mean, I think everybody's excited about it. And that's our kind of team mentality, right? We've got something new. Is it going to benefit us and the club? Yes. Is it money well spent? Yes. Is it worth our effort? Because it's time is really the biggest issue with any of this stuff, is the setup of it and then managing it. It's still something to manage. You don't just fly the drone and it waters the golf course for yourself, right? You have to manage that along with the rest of your job, the rest of your job duties, right?
Yeah.
So as far as a team, very little.
That's
members. Great. A lot of the I mean the membership, like anything at this technical level, you have a small percentage of the green committee that is really fascinated by it. The entire greens committee is very happy that we're managing a resource like this that is so important to Southern California in this manner. And there's a few of our green committee members that really take to the technology and are really fascinated by all of that. So it's nice to have that support and understand that those dollars spent will ultimately be returned on a lower water bill or a better standing in the community of not using as much of a shared resource as we once had, those types of things. So there's a big value that everyone sees in it. The understanding of it, a lot of it kind of, the better players notice there's no wet spots.
Yeah.
So it's something that's so specific to what our jobs are. It's hard to really get them to wrap their head around the irrigation practices and those types of things, because they just don't do it. But what they all seem to be excited about is the autonomous mowers that we have mowing the rough at the short course and around the putting green and all of those things.
Well, I would imagine that the club's kind of philanthropic ethos maybe works into the fact that they're seeing your team use all this technology to best use the resources that you have, you mentioned the community resource, and it's a shared resource. I would think that would fit in with their mindset. And so they go, man, boy, this makes sense to me on a bunch of different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that these are new and different solutions to the same problem that California's had for a long time, other than shut the water off or have dead grass. I mean, there's different things. And yes, the ethos of the club is very happy to be able to say that we're the most efficient water user around. That's very important to them. It's important to me as well. I mean, I just think that's what we should be doing. If these pieces of technology are out there to be utilized for these things, we should, adopt them as much as possible.
Well, you mentioned the autonomous mowers that I spent some time at one of the interactive facility tours that GCSA had at the recent conference and trade show in Orlando. There was something focused on that. Kind of tell us what you're using, how you're using them, and kind of your initial impressions of what advantages it's given to you guys and where maybe the next wave of improvements need to come.
So I've been trying to get autonomous mowers for years, and obviously a lot of it's stuck in legal, and then there's the extra layer of California legal, and because these mowers have been around all over the world, for a long time. But what we're winding up with here at Hillcrest is we went with Husqvarna. They have small, what I thought initially when they brought it here was a small little like Roomba type thing, but it's more of a commercial grade. And I was not skeptical, but I said, sure, we'll try it out, because part of our drone and soil sensors, it's all under the umbrella of Turf Cloud and GreenSight. And they also have the Husqvarna mowers. So this is really the only commercially available autonomous mower that's on the market right now. So we said, sure. So they left 3 of them at the property. Again, with this, it's a lot in the setup, and it took somebody to manage this, the mapping and the problems and communicating with these issues, some of the issues that we're having, because obviously the terrain is meaningful. But once we got it set up, it was, our first couple of weeks, because it was a funny pattern for whatever reason. There's lots of technical reasons why it mows the way it does, but I don't want to get too far into it. I don't want to misspeak, right? But they eventually, I'd say after about 3 weeks to a month, we put them out on our short course in the rough, and we just didn't schedule somebody over there to mow it again for the rest of the summer. So it was one of those things. Once it was set up, you kind of forgot about it. Obviously, there's a couple of alerts that happen, and everything comes up on your phone with all the other things, like you got to go buy milk and your auto mower is shut down.
Right.
So as you're sifting through all your alerts, there's that, but it was largely maintenance free after the setup, with some small stuff. But we did not have to worry about mowing those small, the short course had a few acres of rough on it, and with 3 mowers, it was one of those. Once the demo period ended, we were like, oh, we got to put this back on the schedule. Yeah. And then you start to see all the mower damage, because a lot of the hillsides, tire, the whole, all the machine damage that happens that you just didn't have there for 3 months. So that was an unforeseen benefit that you didn't even realize what level of operator training you really needed, what was going on out there.
Do you envision a world where you're able to do more in your championship course with these mowers, and just kind of take the next step, or is the short course just that's just the right place to utilize this technology right now?
No. So what we've done is expand onto the golf course, the championship golf course, into the areas that we walk mow. Okay. Right? As many as we can, because there is a power requirement for the receivers. So what we've looked at this as a labor savings, right? This is
sure.
So where can the smaller mowers, small units be utilized right now? And as they develop larger and larger units to be out on the golf course, then you can get the acreage that you really need. And what I didn't want to have was, which I'm actually leaning more towards as the labor situation hasn't changed that much either, is having just, 25 of these things out there. But the benefit to this is that you can also mow in the middle of the night. So once you start to lose the concept of you have 8 hours to get all this done, you have 24 hours to mow the property with these mowers. So it's not so much like you don't have those same restrictions that you did with the typical mowers. So it kind of opened up a lot more possibilities and thought process behind it. So we initially have taken almost all of the walk mowing out of the golf course at this point with these smaller mowers. So that's another 15 hours a week that we've saved. And there's some slopes and there's some limitations that I think the machines have on our property.
Sure.
But I think something on that's just more specific to us. But I mean, I see a huge benefit in the way that it's going. I mean, they're small enough, they're quiet. So mowing in the middle of the night, in the middle of the city, no problem. No problem. You'll hear an ambulance before you hear a mower.
Yeah.
On the property. So yes, I do see us slowly bringing more and more pieces of the property. Generally, the stuff that's the most challenging for machinery and to have people on, we're going to tackle first. And then the flatter areas, I mean, you can get through it pretty quick with a typical, batwing mower. So really more of the areas, we have a lot of undulation on this property. So what we do wind up with is quite a bit of machine stress or damage in the rough. So if we can eliminate some of those areas and the need for machinery, I just think then you also lose now we have to go repair that, right? You don't have, you lose all of these different things and that are just part of your maintenance, right? Oh, the machine has a tire spun out. A couple of guys, all of these small little hour things that you're doing associated with mowing just suddenly aren't there. And then it's not just the mow time, it's some of that other stuff too that you come up with.
Yeah, I really do think it's those ancillary benefits that maybe people won't think about at first once they've experienced these things, whether it's just a demo situation or kind of a real world setting like yourself. I think that's where it'll start to convince folks that, man, I didn't think about the 24-hour cycle to be able to mow. I didn't think about, boy, it really will save us labor when we're struggling already to get people on board to do that. I really think that's going to start shifting the tide. Affordability is also going to be something. And I did want to ask you about, as you guys have adopted these things, what you're hearing from other superintendents, from your colleagues, what kind of questions are you getting? Because I'm sure there's listeners out there listening to our conversation. They're like, I'm at a municipal golf course in Ohio. I have 18 holes. I have limited resources. These are sorts of tools that I'd love to embrace. I just don't have the ability. So what sort of things do you hear from your colleagues in the industry about everything that you're doing?
So, I mean, this has all been pretty recent that I've been being contacted about the discussions. The biggest question is, do those mowers really work? Right? There's a skepticism about, which I had as well, as I don't know how good this is going to be. And can you scale it? Those are the things with the mowers. Everybody's like just chomping at the bit to have some of their golf course mowed autonomously because of the labor.
Yeah.
But my comment to that is always, there's a lot in the setup, and it's still something to manage. So, but it's a lot. I mean, it's definitely less than managing 4 people, right? So none of this is just set it and forget it. I don't think there's any element of golf maintenance that's set it and forget it, right? You still have to manage all aspects of the operation. It's a lot less to deal with in terms of the mowers go. And as far as affordability, they're not very expensive for the benefit you get. If you're talking about just picking up some of these small areas that you can really start to shave off little hours, or even the fact that if you're already in an operation that's somewhat financially to get to all of these things with a very small capital investment, your conditioning might just get better for the same amount of money you're spending on labor. You're just getting to the things that you're missing, right? So it's not. We don't have any plans of cutting payroll in replacement of these mowers, right? There's other things for us to do. We think that we can conditioning the golf course better at this point then with these mowers is going to add hours elsewhere on the property that we're not getting to. And that's what I mean. So if you could, without having to add hourly employees, you could then utilize their hours differently,
right,
and really elevate the level of the golf course you're at. It's all based on a lot of it, not all of it, but I mean, a lot of your resources are based on labor, right? So if you can find a way to just move those hours around that aren't mowing grass or not mowing all of the grass, then some of the stuff that you're just looking at that you just drives you nuts that you can't get to, suddenly you can start picking off some of those small areas, and your whole product becomes better.
Yeah, it probably takes some creativity to think about how, what's, again, the ancillary benefit, what will be kind of the trickle down from introducing stuff like that. Do you get equal questions on, say, your use of your work with green site and the drones or your irrigation as you do with the mowers?
We do. I think that the drone and the irrigation management that took us in terms of setup, right? The mowers, within a few weeks, you kind of figure it out, right? There's only so many things. It's fairly simple. When you're talking about irrigating a golf course, it took us a very long time to get to the point where we are. And I think that you can get there quicker with all of these tools. I think that GreenSight could, if you fly for a month, you would know and have good data where you could put your programming differently than necessarily the way that we did it. But everyone is interested in how we're saving water, or at least how to save water and how to condition the golf course better with water. Meaning your wet spots, dry spots, the consistency problems that a lot of us have here. That's the questions I get. Mostly it's been about the mowers, the GreenSight. I get a lot more questions about it from the younger assistant roles. They just have grown up with a much different level of technology, and I don't think that necessarily means they understand it any better. There's but there's just a comfort level and a trust in it that maybe not everybody has. I mean, I do remember in a dorm room when your computer would just go blue. You lose your paper. Like, it doesn't happen anymore. It's in a cloud somewhere. You don't lose anything, which could also be a bad thing. But
that's right.
But meaning, like, there's a level of trust in technology that I think that as it got better and better and better, that everyone has, and that's just more of an age demographic. So the fact that we can manage a property like this, the water, the irrigation, the way we do, is I hope that you would see more of that, because it works.
Sure.
Does it work for every property? I couldn't make that claim, but it's certainly worked for us. And I can tell you that we've saved water and have provided a better playing experience without having to rely on labor to get you there, right? To do all the hand watering. And then, we have a wet spot over here, get the trencher and put in drain pipe, where it's, when you got to remember, when you have wet spots here, it hasn't rained in a year. So it's coming from the irrigation system. So
that's right.
Not everywhere, some places need drain pipe. Don't get me wrong, bottom of the hill, hard to avoid, but managing your water is just really important. And I think these are newer tools to do that.
Yeah. And you certainly embraced them. Is there any, first off, I appreciate your time. And I really hope that folks listening who have a curiosity about these things will continue to explore them, because as you've illustrated, there are benefits across the board, from the condition of your golf course to being able to better utilize personnel and labor, just all sorts of benefits. And I hope people will either explore a little bit more, maybe take the leap. Is there anything else that you are keeping your eye on in terms of new technologies in the industry, or like, boy, that looks pretty cool, we'd sure like to maybe dip our toe in that at some point?
I think that you're looking at a lot of different technologies that are managing water. So soil sensors may be the thing that's somewhat archaic in another few years, and I see some of these images that are on fairway units tracking moisture content, and for tournament preparation. I just saw something like that on from Thomas Bastis in one of the tournaments that he was doing, and it's all very fascinating there. I think really when you're looking at operations wise for us, now we're going to get into integrating the drone into the GPS models and building fertility programs based on the NDVI camera, meaning there's half of fairways just not, you can build a recipe through John Deere Ops Center and changing the rate as you're spraying without having to go out, adding labor to another supplemental. How many times you go, all right, go off, number 3 approach, just put an extra bit of FERT on. You can do all of that when you're doing your normal spray application. Right. So there's a lot more of that. Again, like you said, picking up all of those little ancillary benefits of labor and putting it more to better utilization in the operation. So, looking at line items in your budget, you're talking about water, talking about fertilizer, you're talking about sand and labor. For us, I would say that water, fertility and plant protection, and labor, those are our three biggest line items. And how do we best and most efficiently utilize the club's resources on those line items, and then see what else falls out from there, right? If you can get past the 3 big ones, then you might say have other savings from there.
All right. Well, Matt, listen, I really appreciate your time. I thought it's a fascinating conversation. I want to throw some of our final shots at you here. Real quick answers. You are a golfer, as you identify. What's your favorite golf course?
Ooh, man. Wow. Monterey Peninsula Country Club short course.
Beautiful. Just I've never played it. I've driven by it through my time on the peninsula. Unbelievable. Okay. Best worst part about living in Southern California. I almost said non-traffic division, but I'll let you use that one if you want.
That's pretty obvious. The best is the weather, obviously. There's easily 300 days of sun here. Worst, definitely the traffic by far. And, there's a certain cost of all this beautiful
Absolutely.
weather.
Absolutely costly.
So, but it's a great place to live.
Do you miss your Northeast where you grew up in the Mid-Atlantic and any of that?
I miss the proximity to my family and good pizza.
That's right. There you go. Absolutely. That's both of those are driving issues.
It's tough being, you can't beat the Italian food in New Jersey.
Yeah. If you weren't a superintendent, what would you be doing?
It's funny that somebody asked me this recently, because that's changed throughout my career, right? I mean, when I was younger, I would probably have answered, I would be a carpenter or contractor like my father, or at some point, at any given point, all of us would probably say anything but this.
That's right.
Right. And then
That's right.
Now I really very interested in how these businesses and technology are going to change the landscape of golf, and how much it changes everything, right? So probably more, I don't know, the startup world that I kind of looked at through the aquarium in San Francisco was pretty fascinating.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that something along those lines would be where I would be now. That's exciting.
Yeah.
I do go home and back to New Jersey every once in a while. My father will put me back to work, and don't want to do that anymore.
That's right. That's right. And the final question: you've got a certain big golf tournament that's coming to your neighborhood in June in the U.S. Open. What will you be doing U.S. Open week?
U.S. Open week, I will be. I think half my team is going over there to volunteer, so I'll be here. And I will also be walking the grounds with my father for his 70th birthday.
Yeah, that'll be great. Now, the LA Country Club, is it right next to where you guys are located?
It's a mile away. It's on the other side of Century City. So we can. We're looking at the same buildings from a different.
That's right.
Point. Yeah.
That's right. June, the U.S. Open coming back.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. It seems to
least you'll have some more traffic then to deal with. I'm sure that'll be enjoyable.
I'm just going to get a bicycle.
That's right. It. Can't get enough. Well, Matt Muhlenbruch, I appreciate your time, Matt. The certified golf course superintendent at Hillcrest Country Club. Enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for taking the time to share some of the stuff you're doing on the golf course. And I hope folks learned a little something, and maybe we'll shoot you an email or give you a call to ask even more. Matt, thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
Well, that's a wrap on the 50th episode of the GCSAA Podcast. Once again, I want to thank Matt Muhlenbruch, CGCS from Hillcrest Country Club in Los Angeles, for joining us and giving us an inside look at how the technological revolution in golf course management has changed his operations there. Got much more on the way with the podcast, both in the audio form and in the new video versions of the podcast that you can find on GCSAA TV and on the association's YouTube channel. So keep a close watch on those feeds to see what's next. But for now, we will sign off with some thank yous to our podcast editor, Evan Shapiro, to everyone at Enview for their ongoing sponsorship of the podcast, to the 9 members of the GCSAA Board of Directors, to my coworkers at GCSAA headquarters in Lawrence, Kansas, and of course, my thanks to each of you for subscribing, downloading, and listening and/or watching. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll catch up again real soon on the next episode of the GCSAA Podcast.